London, 1805. The crystal chandeliers of Almack's cast their golden glow upon the cream of London society. Couples whirled across the polished floor in perfect harmony, a kaleidoscope of silk gowns and tailored evening coats. Yet in the shadowed alcove near the refreshment table, Beatrice Ashworth stood alone, a silent sentinel in her modest rose-coloured gown. At 28, Beatrice had long accepted her role as the forgotten daughter of Earl Ashworth. Not that anyone would guess her connection to the three radiant young women currently commanding every eye in the centre of the ballroom. The Ashworth sisters, Rosalind, Arabella and Charlotte, were the diamonds of the season, each more dazzling than the last. "Your sisters have outdone themselves tonight," said a familiar voice. Beatrice turned to find Lady Pemberton, her father's cousin, taking punch beside her. "Indeed. Rosalind seems to have completely captivated Lord Whitmore, and to think your father was nearly destitute just 3 seasons ago. One might wonder how he managed such a remarkable recovery." Beatrice's fingers tightened on her fan. Few knew the truth. It was her inheritance, the money left by her maternal grandmother, that had funded her sisters' seasons and secured their futures. Her own prospects had been the sacrifice. "Providence has been generous with us," Beatrice replied diplomatically. "Providence," Lady Pemberton sniffed. "Though I wonder if Providence will be equally generous when the creditors come calling again. Your father's investments in the shipping ventures are failing, my dear. The rumours have already begun." A cold dread settled in Beatrice's stomach. The money was gone. All of it. The Ashworth name hangs by a thread. One scandal, one whisper of insolvency, and all your sacrifices for your sisters will have been for naught. Across the room, Beatrice caught sight of her father, Victor, Earl Ashworth. His face was flushed with wine as he gestured animatedly. At 55, years of excess had taken their toll. The orchestra struck up a new melody, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. A hush fell over the assembly as a tall figure appeared at the entrance. "His Grace the Duke of Thornwick," announced the footman. Alexander Harcourt, the 7th Duke of Thornwick, stood framed in the doorway. At 35, he commanded attention not merely for his title, but for the formidable presence he brought. His dark hair was swept back from a face of classical beauty, marred only by a thin scar along his left jaw. His steel-grey eyes seemed to miss nothing. "Well," murmured Lady Pemberton, "this is unexpected. His Grace rarely graces these gatherings." "I heard he's finally seeking a bride," whispered a young woman nearby. "Lady Helena Sinclair is said to be the front-runner." Beatrice watched as the Duke moved through the crowd, acknowledging greetings with brief nods but engaging with no one. "Your father is about to make a grave mistake," Lady Pemberton said suddenly. Beatrice's heart sank. She moved quickly, intercepting her father before he could reach the Duke. "Father," she said quietly, taking his arm, "perhaps we might—" "Not now, Beatrice," he slurred. "Can't you see? Thornwick is here." "Lord Ashworth?" came a deep voice, and Beatrice found herself looking up into the impassive face of the Duke himself. "I was hoping for a word." "Your Grace, may I present my eldest daughter, Miss Beatrice Ashworth?" The Duke's gaze shifted to Beatrice. "Miss Ashworth, Your Grace," she curtsied. "I understand you manage your father's household, and quite capably from what I hear." Before Beatrice could respond, Lady Helena Sinclair arrived, resplendent in sapphire silk. The Duke's eyes returned to Beatrice. "Miss Ashworth, I should like to call on you tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Without waiting for her response, he bowed and moved away. Tomorrow, she sensed, would change everything. If this story of unexpected love touches your heart, subscribe and leave a comment below. Character count 2598. The drawing room of Ashworth House had never seemed so small as when the Duke of Thornwick stood within it. His broad shoulders seemed to shrink the faded grandeur, highlighting the worn carpet and discoloured wallpaper. Beatrice sat on the edge of the settee, hands folded. Across from her, the Duke occupied a wing-back chair. "You must be wondering why I've come," he said finally. "I confess I am curious, Your Grace. I'll be direct, Miss Ashworth. I require a wife." Beatrice blinked. "I see. No, I don't believe you do. I require a specific type of wife. One who understands discretion and duty. One who can manage a household without drama. One who has no illusions about romance." He leaned forward. "I've observed you. You've sacrificed your prospects to secure your sister's futures. You've managed your father's household through difficult circumstances. You are practical and discreet." Beatrice felt as though the air had been sucked from the room. "Your Grace, surely Lady Helena is precisely what I do not want. A woman whose beauty is matched only by her ambition." He stood and moved to the window. "I have responsibilities that require my full attention. Estates to manage, parliamentary matters, business interests. I need a partner who understands my focus must remain on these duties. And you believe I might be that partner?" "I do. There are rumors about your family's financial situation. I know your father has made unwise investments, that creditors are circling, that without intervention, the Ashworth name will be disgraced within months." Beatrice felt heat rising in her cheeks. "I offer you a straightforward arrangement. As my Duchess, you would have the means to clear your family's debts. Your sister's positions would be unassailable. Your father would be protected. And in return, you would manage my households, attend functions when required, present a dignified front to society. You would want for nothing material." Beatrice studied him. "Why me? Surely there are dozens who would accept such an arrangement." Something flickered in his eyes. "There are rumors about me as well. A suitable marriage would put many to rest." "I see. You require a shield, not a partner. I prefer to think of it as mutually beneficial. Take 24 hours to consider. I'll return tomorrow at the same time." After he departed, Beatrice remained motionless. The Duke's offer was both salvation and prison. Financial security, but at what cost? When her father burst in an hour later, wild with excitement, she already knew her answer. "Is it true? Thornwick has offered for you?" "Yes." "Beatrice, do you understand? We are saved. A duke. He knows about our financial situation. That's why he's offering." "What does it matter why? You're 8 and 20. Long past the age for romantic nonsense. Thornwick offers you position, wealth, security." Her father gripped her shoulders. "There is no choice. By next month we will lose this house. Your sister's marriages will be tainted. Everything you've sacrificed for will be destroyed." "I know," she said softly. "I know what must be done." The following afternoon, when the Duke returned, Beatrice was waiting. "You've made your decision," he said. "I have. I accept your offer, Your Grace." Relief crossed his face. "Alexander, if we are to be married, you should use my given name." "Alexander?" He withdrew a small box. "This belonged to my mother, the Thornwick betrothal ring." As he slid the magnificent ruby ring onto her finger, his hand brushed hers. A brief, electric contact that sent an unexpected shiver through her. "We will announce our engagement next week. The wedding will take place at Thornwick Abbey in 1 month. So soon? I see no reason for delay. My solicitor will address your family's most pressing debts immediately." "Thank you. I believe we will suit, Beatrice. We are neither of us given to excessive sentiment or unrealistic expectations." As he bowed over her hand, Beatrice wondered if he truly believed that. The journey to Thornwick Abbey took the better part of a day. Beatrice, now the Duchess of Thornwick after a small wedding, watched the countryside from the carriage window, acutely aware of Alexander seated across from her. In the month since their engagement, she had seen him only a handful of times. The settlement had been generous. Their betrothal met with astonishment. Through it all, Alexander had remained polite but distant. Now, as husband and wife, they were alone together for the first time. "We'll arrive before nightfall," Alexander said. "I've sent word ahead. I look forward to seeing Thornwick Abbey. I understand it's quite beautiful. It has been in my family for 12 generations. The east wing dates to Tudor times, though most was built by my great-grandfather." "And you've lived there all your life?" "Until I was sent to Eton at 10, yes." His expression closed. "My father believed in traditional education." Beatrice sensed an old wound but didn't press. "Will we have guests immediately?" Alexander's mouth curved slightly. "I anticipated you'd want to become familiar with the household first. We'll have privacy before society descends. Though my grandmother maintains a dower house on the estate, she will expect to meet you promptly. I shall look forward to it." "You may revise that opinion. My grandmother is formidable." "I'm not easily intimidated, Your Grace." "Alexander. And yes, I'm counting on that quality." The carriage crested a hill, and suddenly Thornwick Abbey lay before them. Beatrice caught her breath. The house was magnificent, perfect Palladian architecture with symmetrical wings and a grand dome. Extensive gardens stretched away, and beyond, a lake shimmered silver. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yes." "It is." As they approached, Beatrice saw servants assembled on the steps. At their head stood a distinguished older man with silver hair. "Graves, my butler. He served since my father's time." The carriage halted. Alexander descended first, then offered his hand. As she stepped down, dozens of eyes evaluated their new mistress. Alexander kept her hand in his. "May I present her Grace, the Duchess of Thornwick?" Beatrice inclined her head graciously. "I am pleased to meet you all." "Welcome to Thornwick Abbey, Your Grace," Graves said with a deep bow. The staff filed past. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hadley, the cook, Mrs. Brennan, the head gardener, Mr. Fletcher. Last came a pretty young woman. "Reynolds will be your lady's maid." "Thank you. I'm sure we'll get along splendidly." Inside, the house was even more impressive. Marble floors gleamed as Alexander led Beatrice through magnificent rooms, the grand salon, the music room with a pianoforte, the formal dining room. "Your rooms are in the West Wing. I took the liberty of having them redecorated, but if they don't suit, you need only say the word. I'm sure they'll be lovely." The Duchess's chambers exceeded her expectations. A sitting room in soft blues opened into a spacious bedchamber dominated by a massive four-poster bed. Beyond lay a dressing room and a private bathing chamber. "Oh," she breathed, "it's perfect." For the first time, Alexander looked genuinely pleased. "I'm glad you approve. My rooms adjoin yours, though naturally your privacy will be respected." Beatrice felt her cheeks warm. "Of course, thank you. Dinner will be at 8. I thought you might wish to rest after the journey." "Yes, that would be most welcome." After he departed, Beatrice sank onto a chair, suddenly overwhelmed. She was a duchess, mistress of this grand estate, wife to one of the most powerful men in England, and yet she had never felt more alone. The weeks that followed settled into a surprisingly comfortable rhythm. Each morning, Beatrice broke her fast alone, then met with Mrs. Hadley to discuss household matters. The housekeeper had initially been wary, but Beatrice's genuine interest and respectful treatment of the staff gradually won her approval. By the second week, Beatrice had visited every part of the vast house, introducing herself to each member of the household. She had reviewed the menus, the wine cellar inventory, the linen stores, and a dozen other aspects of running such a grand establishment. Alexander, true to his word, spent his mornings attending to business. Beatrice saw little of him until the evenings, when they dined together and afterward often spent time in the library, reading in companionable silence or occasionally discussing books or estate matters. It was a peaceful existence, if somewhat lonely. Beatrice wrote regular letters to her sisters and father, receiving enthusiastic responses about their newly elevated social positions. She tried not to notice the absence of any inquiry about her own happiness. On the 10th day after their arrival, Alexander informed her over breakfast that they would be receiving their first visitor. "My grandmother wishes to meet you. She's invited us to tea at the Dower House this afternoon." The Dowager Duchess, the formidable one. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The very same. Catherine Harcourt, Dowager Duchess of Thornwick. I feel I should warn you. She can be rather direct. I shall endeavour to make a good impression." Alexander hesitated, then reached across the table to briefly touch her hand, the first time he had initiated such contact since their wedding day. "Just be yourself. She values authenticity above all else." The Dower House proved to be a charming Queen Anne residence set among formal gardens at the lake's edge. As their carriage approached, Beatrice smoothed her pale yellow walking dress nervously. "She won't bite, at least not immediately." Beatrice gave him a reproachful look, but was secretly pleased by this small attempt at humour. The Dowager Duchess awaited them in a sunlit drawing room with spectacular views of the lake. At 71, Catherine Harcourt remained striking, her silver hair arranged elegantly, her posture straight, her blue eyes sharp and assessing. "So," she said after brief greetings, "you're the girl who has turned society on its ear by capturing my grandson. Do sit down and let me look at you properly." Beatrice took the indicated seat, feeling rather like a specimen under examination. "Now then, tell me about yourself, and spare me the usual platitudes. I want to know what sort of woman you are." Beatrice considered carefully. "I'm practical. I value honesty and kindness above most other qualities. I enjoy reading and music. I believe in meeting one's obligations and keeping one's word." And what made you accept my grandson's proposal? We both know it wasn't a love match." "Grandmother," Alexander said warningly. "Nonsense. If she's to be a Thornwick Duchess, she should be able to answer a simple question. Beatrice met the older woman's gaze steadily. Your grandson offered me security for my family and a position where I might be of use. I accepted, because it seemed a fair arrangement for us both. Honesty indeed. The dowager's eyes gleamed with approval. And now that you've had a fortnight to assess your bargain, do you find it satisfactory? Beatrice was acutely aware of Alexander watching her. I find Thornwick Abbey and its people welcoming. Your grandson has been considerate and generous. I have no complaints. No complaints? A diplomatic answer. Character count, 2,500. Alexander, I believe I'd like to speak with your Duchess alone for a few moments. Perhaps you might admire the roses my gardener has cultivated. Alexander looked as though he might protest, but after a moment's hesitation he nodded. I'll return shortly, he said to Beatrice, his eyes conveying a silent apology. Once they were alone, the dowager's manner changed subtly. The intimidating grandame softened into something more human, more vulnerable. I was married at 19, she said, surprising Beatrice with this personal revelation. To a man I had met exactly twice. He was 20 years my senior and intimidating beyond words. That must have been difficult. It was terrifying. Yet we came to love each other deeply. Not at first. That came later, built day by day through small kindnesses and shared experiences. She leaned forward, suddenly intent. My grandson is a complex man, Beatrice. He guards himself carefully, and with good reason. His childhood was not happy. I had suspected as much, though he rarely speaks of personal matters. His father, my son, was a cold, demanding man who saw weakness in any display of emotion. And Alexander's mother, Caroline, was beautiful but frail, both in body and spirit. She died when Alexander was 8, unable to withstand the demands of her position or her husband's neglect. Beatrice felt a pang of sympathy for the boy Alexander had been. I'm sorry. After her death, my son became even more rigid in his expectations. Alexander was sent to school far too young, denied the affection he craved, taught that duty must supersede all personal desires. The dowager's eyes grew distant with old pain. I did what I could, but a grandmother's influence only extends so far. Why are you telling me this? The old woman's gaze sharpened. Because you have an opportunity I lacked with my own son, to break the cycle, to help Alexander become more than the armor he wears. I'm not certain he would welcome such interference. Our arrangement is based on mutual respect and independence. Arrangements change. I've watched you both today. The way you look at him when you think he isn't noticing. The way he softens in your presence, whether he realizes it or not. Heat rose in Beatrice's cheeks. Your Grace. Catherine, please. We are family now. I'm not suggesting you launch some grand campaign to win his heart. Just be patient with him. Show him that vulnerability need not equal weakness. Before Beatrice could respond, the door opened, and Alexander returned. I trust you finished dismantling my character, he asked dryly. For today. I was just telling Beatrice about my roses. Perhaps you might show her the gardens before you leave. As they strolled among the neatly tended flower beds, Beatrice found herself watching Alexander with new eyes, seeing beyond the reserved duke to the wounded boy he had been. She likes you, Alexander said, which is more than can be said for most people she meets. I like her as well. She reminds me of you. Alexander looked startled. Most people find us entirely different. In manner, perhaps, but you share the same directness, the same clarity of purpose. She hesitated, and the same kindness hidden beneath a formidable exterior. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. You find me kind? Increasingly so, though I suspect you work hard to conceal it. For a long moment, Alexander studied her face as though seeing her for the first time. Then he offered his arm again. We should return to the house. There's a chill in the air. That evening at dinner, something had shifted between them. Alexander seemed more present somehow, asking questions about her day, listening attentively. When she mentioned her desire to review the charitable works traditionally undertaken by the Thornwick Duchesses, he offered to have all relevant papers brought to her sitting room. My mother established several initiatives in the nearby villages, schools, a small infirmary, apprenticeships. After her death, my grandmother oversaw them, but they would benefit from your attention now. I should like that very much. Perhaps I might visit some of these establishments soon. I could accompany you, that is, if you would welcome the company. I would, very much so. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment the air between them seemed charged with possibility. Character count: 2,498. The following days brought a subtle but definite change to their relationship. Alexander began to include Beatrice in aspects of estate management, seeking her opinion on matters ranging from tenant disputes to the restoration of the East Wing. They rode out together to visit the villages, where Beatrice was received warmly as the new Duchess. At a small school in Thornley Village, Beatrice knelt to speak with a shy little girl who reminded her of herself at that age. When she glanced up, she found Alexander watching her with an expression that made her heart skip, something warm and appreciative that vanished the moment he realized she had noticed. In the evenings they still retired to the library, but now they often read passages aloud to each other or engaged in spirited debates about literature and philosophy. Beatrice discovered that beneath his reserved exterior, Alexander possessed both a formidable intellect and a dry wit that increasingly revealed itself in her presence. One night, as rain lashed against the windows and a fire crackled in the grate, Alexander closed his book and regarded her thoughtfully. "You're not what I expected," he said. Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment or a complaint?" "Definitely a compliment. I thought we would be compatible. I didn't anticipate that I would enjoy your company so much." The simple admission warmed her more than the fire. "I feel the same. Our arrangement has proven more agreeable than I dared hope." "Arrangement?" Alexander repeated the word slowly, as if tasting it. "Is that still how you think of our marriage?" Before Beatrice could respond, Graves appeared at the door. "Forgive the interruption, Your Grace, but a carriage has just arrived. Lady Helena Sinclair requests accommodation for the night. She claims the weather has made travel unsafe." Alexander's expression closed immediately, all warmth vanishing. "Show her to the blue guest suite. Inform her we will receive her shortly." When Graves had gone, Alexander rose and moved to the fireplace, his back to Beatrice. "I apologize for this intrusion. Helena has always been persistent." Beatrice felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "Lady Sinclair was a friend of yours." "We were briefly engaged 3 years ago. The arrangement ended by mutual agreement." This was news to Beatrice and seemed to contradict the dowager's assertion that Alexander had never seriously courted anyone before. "I see." Alexander turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "Helena is complicated. It would be best if I spoke with her alone first." "Of course." Beatrice rose, smoothing her skirts. "I shall retire for the evening." "Beatrice." He reached for her hand, then stopped himself. "Thank you for understanding." But as she made her way to her chambers, Beatrice wasn't sure she understood at all. The sudden appearance of Alexander's former fiancée, the beautiful woman whom everyone had expected him to marry, seemed too coincidental, and Alexander's reaction, that immediate withdrawal behind his walls, troubled her more than she cared to admit. Lady Helena Sinclair proved every bit as beautiful as her reputation suggested. When Beatrice finally met her the following morning in the morning room, she was struck by the contrast between them. Helena's golden, dramatic beauty against her own quieter appearance. Helena's confident elegance against her more reserved demeanor. "Duchess." Helena's curtsy was technically perfect, but somehow still suggested she was doing Beatrice a favor. "How kind of you to welcome me to Thornwick Abbey on such short notice." "Not at all. We could hardly turn away a traveller in such weather." Helena smiled, a practiced expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Alexander has always been so very gallant, one of his many admirable qualities." "Indeed." Beatrice gestured to the breakfast on the sideboard. "Please help yourself. His Grace has been called to deal with an issue on the home farm, but he sends his apologies." "How unfortunate, though it does give us an opportunity to become better acquainted. I've been simply dying to meet the woman who accomplished what so many failed to do, capturing the elusive Duke." Character count: 2,499. Beatrice maintained her composure with effort. "I assure you, there was no capturing involved. Our marriage was entered into with clear-eyed understanding on both sides." "How refreshingly pragmatic," Helena's smile sharpened, though I confess myself surprised by Alexander's choice. He always professed to value passion above practicality. The implication hung in the air between them, as deliberate as a slap. Beatrice felt her cheeks warm but refused to be baited. "People often present different facets of themselves to different acquaintances. I'm sure you know His Grace in ways I do not, just as I know him in ways you cannot." Helena's eyes narrowed fractionally. "How diplomatic. I can see why Alexander might value that quality in a companion. Before Beatrice could respond, the door opened and Alexander himself appeared, looking windblown and slightly damp. "Forgive me," he said, his eyes going to Beatrice first before acknowledging their guest. "Helena, I trust you slept well?" "Tolerably." Helena rose gracefully, moving to kiss Alexander's cheek with familiar ease. "Though I've missed our morning rides. Perhaps later when the weather clears. For old time's sake." Beatrice saw the flash of discomfort in Alexander's eyes, though his expression remained polite. "I'm afraid I have commitments today, but your horses will need rest after yesterday's journey. Perhaps tomorrow would be better for travel." It was a dismissal, gracefully phrased but unmistakable. Helena's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, I wouldn't dream of imposing any longer than necessary." Throughout the day, Beatrice found herself watching the interaction between Alexander and their guest with growing unease. Helena clearly knew Alexander well, referencing shared memories, using private jokes, touching his arm with casual intimacy. Alexander remained polite but distant, yet Beatrice couldn't help noticing how he unconsciously positioned himself, always keeping some distance between himself and his former fiancée. That evening they dined as a trio, the conversation flowing with artificial pleasantness. Helena dominated, regaling them with stories that somehow managed to emphasize her long connection to Alexander. "Do you remember that dreadful musical at the Hartleys?" she asked, laughing. "When Alexander rescued me by claiming an urgent message had arrived." "Vaguely," Alexander replied, his attention more on his wine. "He was always rescuing me. So chivalrous. Even when our engagement ended, he insisted on taking all the blame publicly. Wouldn't hear of a word being said against me." Beatrice set down her fork carefully. "That does sound like his grace." "Indeed, though between us, the decision was entirely mutual. We simply realized we were too alike in some ways, too different in others. Passion without compatibility, you might say." Alexander's jaw tightened visibly. "Perhaps we might discuss something else." "Of course, darling." Helena patted his hand. "I forget how you dislike speaking of the past." Later, as the women withdrew to the drawing room while Alexander remained briefly for his port, Helena dropped all pretense of friendliness. "He'll never love you, you know," she said, arranging herself gracefully on a settee. "Alexander doesn't allow himself such vulnerabilities." Beatrice kept her expression neutral. "I wasn't aware that I had solicited your opinion on my marriage. Consider it friendly advice. I've known Alexander since we were children. I understand him in ways you never will. And yet he married me," Beatrice pointed out quietly. Helena's eyes flashed. "For convenience, for respectability, for all the cold, practical reasons that have nothing to do with the heart. But when he needs passion, when he needs someone who truly knows him." She let the implication hang. Beatrice felt a surge of anger, quickly suppressed. "I think you overestimate your importance in his life, Lady Sinclair, and underestimate mine." Before Helena could respond, Alexander rejoined them, his expression weary as he registered the tension. "I thought perhaps some music," he suggested, moving to the pianoforte. "Beatrice plays quite beautifully." "Does she?" Helena's tone suggested skepticism. "How lovely. I should be delighted to hear her." Put on the spot, Beatrice had little choice but to comply. She took her place at the instrument and began to play a Beethoven sonata that required more emotion than technical brilliance. As she played, she lost herself in the music, forgetting her audience until the final notes faded away. The silence that followed was broken by Alexander's quiet voice. "Beautiful," he said, with such sincerity that Beatrice felt her cheeks warm. "Charming," Helena added, her smile not reaching her eyes, though perhaps lacking the passion the composer intended. The evening continued in this vein, with Helena constantly maneuvering to emphasize her connection to Alexander, while subtly undermining Beatrice. Yet by the time they retired, Beatrice noticed that Alexander had positioned himself closer to her on the settee, his hand occasionally brushing hers in what seemed like deliberate reassurance. Character count, 2497. In the privacy of her chambers, as Reynolds helped her prepare for bed, Beatrice found herself troubled by doubts. Had Alexander married her purely because she was the opposite of Helena, safe, practical, undemanding? Was passion something he sought elsewhere? A soft knock at the connecting door interrupted her thoughts. Dismissing Reynolds, Beatrice wrapped her dressing gown more tightly and called, "Enter." Alexander appeared, still fully dressed but with his cravat loosened and his hair slightly disheveled. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "Helena's presence here is not coincidental." Beatrice steeled herself. "I had suspected as much. She wrote to me several weeks ago expressing a desire to reconcile. I responded clearly that I was married and not interested in renewing our acquaintance. This impromptu visit is her way of ignoring my wishes." "I see." Beatrice hesitated. "May I ask why your engagement ended? The true reason?" Alexander stopped pacing, his expression pained. "Helena is not a faithful woman. During our engagement, I discovered she was maintaining relationships with at least 2 other men." Beatrice gasped softly. "How terrible for you." It was illuminating. I had believed myself in love with her. Her betrayal forced me to recognize that what I felt was infatuation, not love, that I had been seduced by her beauty and charm without truly knowing her character. He moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit landscape. "After our engagement ended, I decided that marriage based on genuine respect and shared values would be preferable to one built on passion alone. And then you found me," Beatrice said softly. "Safe, practical, undemanding." Alexander turned, his expression suddenly fierce. "Is that how you see yourself? How you believe I see you? Isn't it accurate? You chose me because I was the opposite of Helena." "I chose you," he said slowly, moving toward her, "because when I looked at you I saw strength, intelligence, integrity, everything Helena lacks." He stopped before her, close enough that Beatrice could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I never expected to find myself drawn to you in other ways as well." Her heart began to race. "What ways?" "The way you smile when something genuinely amuses you. The way you listen, truly listen, when others speak. The way you've made Thornwick Abbey feel like a home again." His voice dropped lower. "The way I find myself thinking of you at odd moments throughout my day." Beatrice scarcely dared breathe. "Alexander, I don't wish to presume. Our arrangement stands as agreed. But I wanted you to know that Helena means nothing to me now, and that you—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "What about me?" Beatrice whispered. Instead of answering, Alexander slowly, tentatively raised his hand to her cheek. His touch was feather-light, questioning. When she didn't pull away, he leaned forward and brushed his lips against hers, a brief, gentle kiss that ended almost before it began. "Good night, Beatrice," he murmured, stepping back. "I'll ensure Helena departs tomorrow, regardless of the weather." After he had gone, Beatrice remained standing in the middle of her chamber, her fingertips touching her lips where his had been. Something had changed between them tonight, something fundamental and irrevocable. The question was, what came next? The morning brought clear skies and Helena's departure. Her farewells were laced with sweet venom and promises to visit again soon. As her carriage disappeared down the long driveway, Beatrice felt herself relax for the first time since the widow's arrival. "She won't return uninvited," Alexander said, reading her thoughts. They stood side by side on the front steps, not quite touching. "I've made that clear." Beatrice nodded, unsure how to navigate this new landscape between them. Last night's kiss, gentle as it had been, had changed everything and nothing. Alexander had been unfailingly courteous at breakfast, but had said nothing of their conversation or the kiss that followed. "I thought I might ride out to visit the school in Fernwood today," she said finally. "The headmistress wrote, asking if I might present prizes at their midsummer recitation. Would you like company?" Alexander asked, his tone carefully casual. Beatrice looked up at him, searching his face. "Yes," she said simply. "I would." Character count, 2,500. The day proved unexpectedly perfect. Warm sunshine, gentle breezes, and the countryside at its most beautiful. As they rode side by side along country lanes, Beatrice found herself sharing stories of her childhood, of her mother's early death, of her determined efforts to keep her sister's futures secure. "So you sacrificed much for them," Alexander observed, as they passed through a particularly lovely stretch of woodland. "It was my duty," Beatrice replied automatically. "No," Alexander corrected gently. "It was your choice. There's a difference." At the school, Beatrice was touched by the children's obvious excitement and the headmistress's genuine appreciation for her interest. As she presented small prizes to beaming students, she caught sight of Alexander standing at the back of the room, watching her with an expression that made her heart quicken. On the ride home, A sudden summer shower caught them halfway to Thornwick Abbey. Laughing, they raced for the shelter of an ancient oak, whose massive canopy offered some protection from the downpour. "Your hair is coming down," Alexander said, reaching up to brush a damp tendril from her cheek. Beatrice was acutely aware of their isolation, the intimacy of the moment. "It always does. My maid despairs of it. I like it this way." His fingers lingered against her skin. Wild, free. The air between them seemed to thicken. Beatrice found herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by some invisible force. Alexander's eyes darkened, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her again. Instead, he straightened and glanced up at the sky. "The rain is letting up. We should continue before it starts again." That evening, the strange tension between them persisted through dinner and into their usual time in the library. Beatrice found it difficult to concentrate on her book, acutely aware of Alexander's presence across from her. Finally, she closed her book with more force than intended. "I think I shall retire early tonight." "Beatrice, wait." He stood as well. "I feel I owe you an explanation for my behavior today." She paused, her heart racing. "What behavior?" "My inconsistency. I find myself in unfamiliar territory. Our arrangement was meant to be straightforward, but my feelings have become complicated." "Mine as well," Beatrice admitted softly. Alexander moved closer, his expression intense. "I told you once that I didn't want passion in my marriage, that I preferred respect and compatibility." "I remember. I'm beginning to think I was wrong, or rather, that I failed to recognize that respect and compatibility can themselves kindle a different kind of passion, one based on genuine knowledge of another person, not merely physical attraction or infatuation." Beatrice's breath caught. "What are you saying, Alexander?" "I'm saying that I want more than our original arrangement." He reached for her hand. "I want a real marriage, Beatrice, in every sense." She looked up at him, searching his face. "Because you desire me. Because I'm falling in love with you," he said simply, "and it terrifies me." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable, in a way she had never expected from him. Beatrice felt tears spring to her eyes. "It terrifies me too. I never thought to find love in this marriage. I didn't dare hope for it." Alexander lifted his free hand to her face, cradling her cheek with infinite tenderness. "I spent my life believing that love was a weakness, that duty and honor were all that mattered. You've shown me how wrong I was." This time when he kissed her, there was nothing tentative about it. His lips claimed hers with a gentle passion that made her knees weaken and her heart soar. Beatrice wound her arms around his neck, drawing him closer, allowing herself to express the feelings she had been trying so hard to suppress. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured. Beatrice nodded beyond words and allowed him to lead her through the connecting door to his chambers, the final barrier between them falling away at last. Later, as moonlight filtered through the curtains and Alexander slept beside her, his arm draped protectively across her waist, Beatrice reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. From a marriage of convenience to something deeper, richer, more profound than either had anticipated, she had entered this arrangement, believing that love was not part of the bargain. Now she couldn't imagine her life without it, without him. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Beatrice's life. She and Alexander settled into a new rhythm, their days filled with shared duties and their nights with increasingly passionate discoveries of each other. Where once Alexander had been reserved, now he sought opportunities to be with her, joining her for morning rides, consulting her on estate matters, even surprising her with small, thoughtful gifts. A first edition of her favorite poetry collection, a delicate bracelet that matched her eyes, wildflowers gathered during his morning ride, left on her pillow with a note that made her blush. In turn, Beatrice found herself blossoming under his affection, growing more confident in her role as Duchess, and more comfortable expressing her own desires and opinions. The staff noticed the change in their master and mistress, exchanging knowing smiles when Alexander would reach for Beatrice's hand, or when she would laugh openly at something he said. Even the Dowager Duchess remarked upon the transformation during one of their regular tea visits. "See?" Catherine said approvingly. "You've done what I hoped, broken through his walls." "He broke through his own walls," Beatrice corrected gently. "I merely gave him reason to try." Summer faded into a glorious autumn. The grounds of Thornwick Abbey transformed into a tapestry of gold and crimson. Beatrice had just begun planning their first major entertainment, a harvest festival for the estate workers and their families, when a letter arrived that would test their newfound happiness. "It's from my sister Rosalind," Beatrice said, breaking the seal at breakfast. "She and Lord Whitmore are in London and wish to visit us at Thornwick Abbey." She looked up, smiling. "Would that be agreeable? I've missed them terribly." "Of course," Alexander replied immediately. "Your family is always welcome here." The letter contained other news as well. Gossip from London about mutual acquaintances, updates on her other sister's activities, and finally, a brief mention that made Beatrice's blood run cold. "What is it?" Alexander asked, noticing her sudden pallor. "Lady Helena has been telling everyone in London that your marriage to me is one of convenience only, that you still harbour feelings for her, and that I'm merely a placeholder until you can secure an annulment." Alexander's expression darkened. "Ridiculous. No one would believe such nonsense. Rosalind says many do, especially since we've been living quietly at Thornwick Abbey, rather than taking our place in society. Then we shall correct that misapprehension immediately." Alexander rose and came around the table to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "First by receiving your family with all honour, then by journeying to London for the little season, and finally by showing everyone that our marriage is one of genuine affection and commitment." He kissed her knuckles gently. "Helena can spread whatever lies she wishes. The truth will be evident to anyone with eyes to see." Beatrice smiled, reassured by his vehemence. "Then we shall expect Rosalind and Lord Whitmore next week?" "Absolutely." Alexander's expression softened. "I look forward to knowing your family better, Beatrice. They are part of you, after all." Rosalind and Lord Whitmore arrived amid a flurry of trunks and servants, bringing with them the energy and gossip of London. Rosalind, pretty, vivacious, and dressed in the latest fashion, embraced her sister warmly before casting an appraising eye over Thornwick Abbey's grand entrance hall. "Gracious, Beatrice, you've done well for yourself," she exclaimed. "Though we hardly see you now that you're a duchess. Too grand for your family, I suppose?" "Don't be ridiculous," Beatrice replied, linking arms with her sister. "I've been learning my duties here, but I've missed you all terribly." Lord Whitmore, a genial man with fashionable side whiskers and an easy manner, shook Alexander's hand warmly. "Thornwick, good to see you again. London's dreadfully dull without you." "I doubt that," Alexander replied with a small smile. "But we plan to remedy our absence soon. Beatrice and I intend to open Thornwick House for the little season." Rosalind clapped her hands in delight. "Wonderful, and just in time to quash those ridiculous rumours that horrid Sinclair woman has been spreading." "Rosalind," Beatrice admonished gently, "perhaps we might settle our guests before discussing London gossip." The first dinner with their guests proved pleasant enough, though Beatrice noticed Rosalind watching Alexander closely throughout the meal, as if trying to determine the true nature of their relationship. After the gentlemen joined the ladies in the drawing room, Rosalind manoeuvred to sit beside Beatrice while the men discussed politics across the room. "Well," she whispered, "is it true what they say, that yours is a marriage of convenience only?" "Of course not," Beatrice replied firmly. "Alexander and I are very happy together." Rosalind looked sceptical. "He's so reserved, though, not at all like Lord Whitmore." "Different men express affection differently," Beatrice said, glancing toward her husband with a smile. As if sensing her gaze, Alexander looked up and returned the smile, a private moment that made her heart warm. Rosalind followed the exchange with interest. "Well," she said, sounding surprised, "perhaps there is something there after all." The days that followed were filled with entertainments for their guests, riding expeditions, tours of the estate, musical evenings, and card parties that included some of the local gentry. Through it all, Beatrice was conscious of Rosalind's watchful eyes, measuring each interaction between her and Alexander. On the third evening, as the ladies withdrew after dinner, Rosalind linked arms with Beatrice in the drawing room. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "Whatever for?" "I believed some of the gossip," Rosalind admitted, "but I've watched you together and it's clear there's genuine affection between you and the Duke. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching, it's rather beautiful, actually." Beatrice squeezed her sister's arm gratefully. "Thank you for seeing the truth. Though I still can't quite believe it's you he fell for, rather than one of us younger girls," Rosalind added with a teasing smile. "You are always so determined to be a spinster." "Life takes unexpected turns," Beatrice replied, thinking of how dramatically her expectations had changed in just a few months. The men joined them shortly, and the evening proceeded pleasantly until a footman entered with a silver salver bearing a letter. "For you, Your Grace," he said, presenting it to Alexander. Alexander broke the seal, scanned the contents, and frowned. "Excuse me," he said, rising. "Estate business requires my attention." After he departed, the conversation continued, but Beatrice found herself distracted, wondering what could have necessitated such an immediate response. When Alexander didn't return after half an hour, she made her excuses and went in search of him. She found him in his study, standing by the window with the letter crumpled in his hand. His posture was rigid with tension. "Alexander," she said softly, "is something wrong?" He turned, his expression grim. "Helena is coming to Thornwick Abbey." Beatrice felt her stomach drop. "What? Why?" "She claims she left some jewelry here during her last visit. A family heirloom of great sentimental value." His mouth twisted. "It's a lie, of course. Another excuse to insert herself into our lives. Can't you refuse her? And have her tell all of London I'm keeping her property?" "No." He ran a hand through his hair. "She arrives tomorrow and will stay one night. No more." Beatrice moved to his side, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "We'll face her together." Alexander covered her hand with his own. "I won't let her come between us, Beatrice, I promise you that." But that night, as they lay in bed, Beatrice found herself plagued by doubts. Helena was beautiful, sophisticated, and shared a history with Alexander that she could never match. "You're thinking too loudly," Alexander murmured, pulling her closer against him. "I'm sorry. I can't help but worry about Helena's visit." "Don't." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "What we have is real, Beatrice. Nothing she says or does can change that." Beatrice wanted desperately to believe him. Helena arrived the following afternoon, perfectly timed to join them for tea, which now included Rosalind and Lord Whitmore. Her surprise at finding additional guests was poorly concealed beneath a veneer of social grace. "Lady Whitmore," she said, accepting a cup from Beatrice, "how delightful to see you again, and in your sister's home, no less. How very cozy." "Isn't it?" Rosalind replied sweetly. "Beatrice and Alexander have been the most wonderful hosts. Such a love match they've made of it." Helena's cup paused halfway to her lips. "Indeed. How fortunate for all concerned." Throughout tea, Helena maintained a stream of conversation, laced with subtle barbs and references to her shared past with Alexander. Beatrice bore it with outward composure, though inside she felt each comment like a needle prick. "Oh, but Alexander, do you remember that dreadful house party at the Rutherfords?" Helena laughed melodiously. "When we got caught in that thunderstorm and had to shelter in the gamekeeper's cottage. You were so gallant, giving me your coat, even though you were soaked through yourself." "I remember," Alexander replied neutrally. "Alexander has always been considerate," Beatrice said evenly. "It's one of his finest qualities." Helena's smile sharpened. "Oh yes, considerate to a fault. Sometimes to his own detriment. Wouldn't you agree, Alexander?" Before he could answer, Rosalind intervened. "Lady Sinclair, I understand you've been quite active in London society this season. Lady Jersey mentioned you'd become quite the fixture at Almack's." The conversation turned, much to Beatrice's relief. After tea, Alexander excused himself to show Lord Whitmore the estate's famous trout stream, leaving the three women alone. "Now then," Helena said, dropping all pretense of pleasantness once the men had gone, "let's speak plainly, shall we? Beatrice, you must know that Alexander and I share a connection that goes beyond mere history. We understand each other in a way that you, as a comparative stranger, simply cannot. I wonder," Rosalind interjected before Beatrice could respond, "if you understand him well enough to know how transparent your schemes appear to him. My sister and the Duke are deeply attached. Anyone with eyes can see it." Helena's perfect composure slipped for just a moment. "Attachment is not passion," she snapped, "and Alexander needs passion. He needs challenge. Things your sister, with all due respect, seems ill-equipped to provide." Beatrice had heard enough. "Lady Sinclair," she said, rising to her feet, "you claim to have lost a piece of jewelry here. Let us look for it now, so that you may be on your way as soon as possible." Helena's smile was triumphant. "So eager to be rid of me. I wonder why." The search for the non-existent jewelry proved as fruitless as Beatrice had expected. Throughout dinner that evening, Helena continued her campaign of subtle undermining, dropping references to intimate moments shared with Alexander and suggesting a depth of understanding that excluded Beatrice entirely. Alexander, to his credit, remained politely distant with Helena while showing small but clear signs of affection toward Beatrice, touching her hand, seeking her opinion, smiling at her comments in a way that left no doubt as to where his heart lay. Yet later, as Beatrice prepared for bed, she couldn't shake the seed of doubt that Helena had so carefully planted. Did she truly know Alexander? Could she provide the passion and challenge he might need? A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Expecting Reynolds, she called, "Enter." Instead, Alexander stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. He looked tired but determined. "Helena leaves first thing tomorrow," he said without preamble. "I've made that abundantly clear to her." Beatrice nodded, relieved. "Thank you." "You've been quiet all evening," he continued, moving to take her hands in his. "Has she upset you with her insinuations?" "A little," Beatrice admitted. "She seems so certain that she understands you in ways I cannot." Alexander's expression softened. "Helena knows the man I was, not the man I am. With her I was always performing, being the person she wanted, rather than myself." He lifted a hand to Beatrice's cheek. "With you, I can simply be. That's the difference she will never comprehend." "And the passion she claims you need?" Beatrice couldn't help asking. "The challenge?" A slow smile spread across Alexander's face. "My dear wife," he said, drawing her closer, "allow me to demonstrate exactly how much passion I find in your arms." Later, lying contentedly in Alexander's embrace, Beatrice felt her doubts melting away. Helena might have shared history with Alexander, but Beatrice had his future, and his heart. The following morning, Helena departed early as promised, her farewell brittle with barely concealed anger at her failed schemes. As her carriage disappeared down the drive, Alexander wrapped an arm around Beatrice's waist. "Let's go to London," he said. "Show society the truth of our marriage." Beatrice leaned into his embrace. "I'd like that very much." London in November was a far cry from the pastoral peace of Thornwick Abbey, but Beatrice found herself enjoying the change. Thornwick House, the Duke's magnificent town residence in Mayfair, had been opened and prepared for their arrival, its grand rooms gleaming with fresh polish. Their entrance into society caused precisely the stir Alexander had intended. When they appeared at Lady Hertford's musical evening, their first public engagement, the assembled company fell into a sudden telling hush before erupting into whispers. "They're all watching us," Beatrice murmured as Alexander led her through the crowd. "Let them watch," he replied, his hand warm at the small of her back. "They'll see exactly what I want them to see, that I am devoted to my wife." And indeed, throughout the evening, Alexander remained attentively by Beatrice's side, introducing her to influential acquaintances, soliciting her opinion in conversations, his pride in her evident to all who observed them. "Your Grace!" Lady Jersey approached them, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "How delightful to see you in town again, and with your Duchess, no less." "Lady Jersey," Alexander bowed slightly. "Yes, Beatrice and I felt it was time to enjoy the little season together." The influential patroness turned her assessing gaze to Beatrice. "Duchess, you've caused quite the sensation by capturing Thornwick here. Half the eligible ladies in London were in despair when your marriage was announced." "I can hardly take credit for capturing His Grace," Beatrice replied with a serene smile. "We simply discovered we were well suited." "Indeed?" Lady Jersey's eyebrows rose. "Lady Sinclair has been telling a somewhat different tale." Alexander's expression hardened. "Has she? How tiresome of her to spread falsehoods." "So they are falsehoods?" Lady Jersey pressed. "Entirely," Alexander said firmly, taking Beatrice's hand in his. "My wife and I are exceedingly happy together. Any suggestion to the contrary is born of malice or wishful thinking." Lady Jersey studied them for a moment, noting their clasped hands and the genuine warmth in Alexander's eyes when he looked at Beatrice. "Well," she said finally, "I shall make a point of saying so to anyone who inquires. You make a handsome couple, I must say." As the influential matron moved away, Alexander squeezed Beatrice's hand gently. "One battle won," he murmured. "Of many to come, I suspect," Beatrice replied. She was proven correct at their next engagement 2 evenings later, a dinner at the home of the Earl and Countess of Harwick. Beatrice found herself seated beside Lord Pelham, a close friend of Alexander's from his university days. "I must say, Duchess, you're not at all what I expected," Lord Pelham commented as the first course was served. "Oh?" Beatrice maintained her pleasant expression. "And what did you expect, my lord?" He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Well, given Alexander's history, I rather thought he'd choose someone more flamboyant." "I see." Beatrice took a small sip of wine. "Perhaps His Grace's preferences have evolved." "They would have to," Lord Pelham agreed, then immediately looked as though he regretted his candour. "Forgive me, that was impolite." "Not at all," Beatrice said calmly. "I appreciate honesty, Lord Pelham, and I assure you His Grace and I suit each other remarkably well." From across the table, Alexander caught her eye and offered a small smile that conveyed both support and admiration. "You know," Lord Pelham said thoughtfully, "I believe you do. I've known Alexander since Oxford, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." By the end of the week, Beatrice had navigated a succession of similar encounters, pointed questions, veiled insinuations, and curious scrutiny from London society at large. Through it all, she maintained her composure. Alexander, for his part, made his devotion clear at every opportunity. He requested Beatrice play the pianoforte at musical gatherings, proudly introduced her to influential friends, and, most tellingly, kept a polite but firm distance whenever Helena appeared at the same events. At last came the true test, Lady Ramsgate's ball, the most significant social event of the little season. Beatrice knew Helena would be present. As Beatrice dressed for the evening, Alexander surprised her by entering her dressing room, dismissing her maid with a gentle wave. "I have something for you," he said, producing a velvet box. "A gift to mark our first London season together." Inside lay a magnificent diamond and sapphire necklace. "Alexander, it's beautiful." "Not half so beautiful as the woman wearing it," Alexander replied, fastening it around her neck. "I want everyone tonight to see what I see when I look at you, the most extraordinary woman in London, and the one who holds my heart completely." The declaration brought tears to Beatrice's eyes. "I love you, more than I ever thought possible." Alexander turned her gently to face him. "When I proposed our arrangement months ago, I could never have imagined how completely you would transform my life. I thought I was offering you security. Instead, you have given me joy." When they arrived at Lady Ramsgate's palatial townhouse, the ball was already in full swing. Their entrance caused the familiar ripple of interest, but Beatrice no longer cared about the speculation. They had scarcely completed their first dance together when Helena materialized before them, resplendent in crimson. "Your Grace," she purred, "you look positively radiant tonight. Marriage clearly agrees with you." Her gaze slid to Alexander. "And you, as handsome as ever." "Lady Sinclair," Alexander acknowledged her coolly, "if you'll excuse us, I believe the next dance is about to begin." "Oh, but surely you can spare me one dance, for old time's sake?" Helena laid a hand on his arm. "Unless the Duchess objects." It was a calculated move. To refuse would make Beatrice appear jealous. "Not at all," Beatrice said smoothly. "I'm sure His Grace would be delighted to stand up with an old friend. I shall take the opportunity to rest." Alexander shot her a questioning look, but Beatrice gave an almost imperceptible nod. She trusted him implicitly. As they moved onto the dance floor, Beatrice made her way to where the Dowager Duchess sat. "Well played," Catherine commented. "Though I wouldn't have blamed you for refusing." "Alexander will handle her appropriately," Beatrice replied. "And this way, society sees that I have no reason to fear Helena's influence." From across the room, Beatrice observed Helena's face grow increasingly frustrated as Alexander rebuffed whatever she was saying. When the dance concluded, he escorted her promptly back to her friends and returned immediately to Beatrice's side. "That was illuminating," he murmured. "Helena made it quite clear that she remains available should I tire of domestic tranquility." "And your response?" Beatrice asked. "I informed her that domestic tranquility with you contained more passion and joy than I ever experienced in her company." His eyes held a mischievous glint. I don't believe she was pleased. Beatrice couldn't help laughing. Later, Lord and Lady Whitmore found them. Rosalind looked triumphant. "Have you heard?" she asked eagerly. "Lady Jersey just publicly snubbed Lady Sinclair, refused to acknowledge her at all, and she's told everyone that she considers your marriage a genuine love match." The tide of opinion has completely turned. Later, as Alexander led Beatrice into the final waltz of the evening, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. The music swelled around them as they moved in perfect harmony. "What are you thinking?" Alexander asked softly. "That I never expected to be here," Beatrice replied honestly. "Dancing with my husband, the envy of London society." "Regrets?" His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Not one," she assured him. "Though I do miss Thornwick Abbey. The peace there, the sense of home." Alexander smiled. "Then we shall return for Christmas, just the two of us." "I would like that very much." As the dance concluded, Alexander defied convention by raising her hand to his lips in full view of the assembly, a public declaration of his affection that caused a ripple of whispers and approving smiles. Across the room, Beatrice saw Helena watching them. For a moment their eyes met, and Beatrice felt a surprising flash of pity. For all her beauty, Helena had never known the kind of love that now filled Beatrice's life. With a small nod of acknowledgement, Beatrice turned away. Helena belonged to the past. Her future and Alexander's lay elsewhere. Thornwick Abbey welcomed them home with snow-draped grounds and wreaths of evergreen. As the carriage drew up, Beatrice felt her heart lift at the sight. "Home at last," Alexander said, helping her down. "I've arranged a surprise for you." "Have you? What sort of surprise?" "You'll see." He led her not toward the main entrance, but around the side of the house, toward the lake. As they rounded the corner, Beatrice gasped. The pathway to the lake had been lined with glowing lanterns casting warm golden light across the snow. At the lake's edge stood a small pavilion, similarly illuminated and decorated with winter greenery. "What is this?" she asked, delighted. "The anniversary of our first meeting. 1 year ago today I first saw you at Almack's." Beatrice stared at him in astonishment. "You remember the exact day?" "I remember everything about that night," he said softly. "The rose color of your gown, the way you tried to prevent your father from approaching me, the moment our eyes first met." They reached the pavilion, where a small table had been set with an elegant supper for two. The brazier provided warmth, and champagne waited in a silver bucket. "Alexander, this is lovely," Beatrice said, "but surely our wedding day would be the more traditional anniversary to celebrate." "We'll celebrate that too," he assured her, pouring champagne. "But this day marks the beginning of a journey neither of us anticipated, the moment fate brought us together." He raised his glass. "To unexpected blessings." "To unexpected blessings," she echoed, touched beyond words. As they dined, Alexander seemed almost nervous, a quality so unusual in him that Beatrice couldn't help noticing. "Is something wrong?" she asked finally. "Not wrong," he assured her quickly, "but I do have something important to say." He reached across the table to take her hand. "When I proposed our marriage, I offered you a cold, practical arrangement. It was a business transaction, nothing more." "Alexander," he shook his head gently. "Please, let me finish. I entered that arrangement believing myself incapable of love. My father had taught me that emotion was weakness, that duty was all that mattered." His fingers tightened around hers. "But you, Beatrice, you changed everything. You showed me that love isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength we possess." He withdrew a small box from his pocket. "I gave you my mother's ring when we became engaged, as tradition dictated, but now I want to give you this, chosen by me, for you alone." Inside lay an exquisite ring of sapphires and diamonds, uniquely beautiful. "I love you, Beatrice," he said simply, "not out of duty or convenience, but with every part of my being. Will you accept this ring as a symbol of that love, as a renewal of our vows, not as Duke and Duchess, but simply as Alexander and Beatrice?" Tears filled Beatrice's eyes as she extended her hand. "Yes," she whispered, "with all my heart, yes." As he slid the ring onto her finger beside the betrothal ring, Alexander's own eyes glistened with emotion. "I never expected to find such happiness." "Nor did I," Beatrice replied softly. "I thought I was sacrificing my happiness for my family. Instead, I found everything I never dared dream of." Alexander rose and drew her to her feet, leading her to the edge of the pavilion. The winter night was clear, stars scattered across the velvet sky. Every window of Thornwick Abbey glowed with candlelight, transforming the house into a beacon of warmth. "Our home," Beatrice murmured, "our future." "And what a future it will be," Alexander said. "I have plans, you know, for the estate, for our charitable work, for our family someday." The mention of family brought a warm flush to Beatrice's cheeks. "About that," she said softly, "I have news of my own to share." Alexander's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Beatrice, are you saying—" "Yes," she confirmed, her smile radiant. "Dr. Morrison confirmed it yesterday. We will have an heir to Thornwick Abbey by midsummer." For a moment Alexander seemed unable to speak. Then, with joy she had never before witnessed in him, he lifted her off her feet and spun her in a circle, his laughter echoing across the frozen lake. "Careful," she protested, laughing with him. "Your heir might object to such treatment." He set her down gently, his hands moving to cradle her face. "You have made me the happiest of men," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My Beatrice, my heart, my unexpected Duchess." As his lips met hers in a kiss that held both tenderness and passion, Beatrice reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. From a marriage of convenience to a union of souls, from strangers bound by arrangement to partners united by the deepest love. Snow began to fall gently around them, soft flakes catching in their hair as they stood together beneath the winter sky. Behind them, Thornwick Abbey glowed with welcome. Before them stretched a future filled with promise. Alexander had always considered himself immune to love. Beatrice had proved him completely wrong, and in that beautiful error lay their greatest blessing. Dear listener, in the quiet moments after the end of our story, as Beatrice and Alexander stand beneath the winter sky with Thornwick Abbey glowing behind them, I invite you to carry a piece of their journey with you. Like Beatrice, many of us have made sacrifices, placing others' needs above our own, accepting what seemed practical, rather than daring to hope for what our hearts truly desired. Yet her story reminds us that unexpected joy can find us at any stage of life, even when we believe our best years have passed. Alexander's transformation teaches us that it's never too late to lower our defenses and open our hearts. The walls we build for protection can become our prisons, keeping out not just pain but the very love and connection we secretly crave. Their journey from arrangement to deep affection reflects what the wisest among us have always known, that lasting love is born not from fleeting passion alone, but from shared values, mutual respect, and the daily choice to see and value one another. As you rest tonight, may you find comfort in knowing that second chances exist, that new beginnings can arrive in unexpected packages, that the heart's capacity for love doesn't diminish with age, but becomes richer, deeper, and more insightful. Like the warm lights of Thornwick Abbey shining through winter darkness, may you be surrounded by those who truly recognize your worth, and may you sleep in peace, secure in the knowledge that true love, whether from family, friends, or a life partner, is a fortress that shelters us through life's hardest storms. Remember Beatrice's quiet strength and Alexander's courage to change. Your own story continues to unfold, with possibilities for connection and joy you may not yet imagine. Sleep well, dear friend. Tomorrow brings another page in your own beautiful narrative. With heartfelt gratitude, the Legends of Passion team. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs a little hope and romance in their life today. From the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for supporting our channel. Your encouragement motivates us and inspires us to continue creating more stories filled with love, redemption, and unexpected twists of fate. Don't miss what comes next. At the end of this video, you'll see another suggested story from our channel. You might be surprised by another thrilling and unforgettable tale. With all our gratitude, the Legends of Passion team.